This is True News, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help us God. 2 weeks ago, Moscow news agencies reported that the Russian Defense Ministry announced that defense contractors had delivered the first batch of Poseidon missiles to be carried on board special-purpose nuclear-powered Belgorod submarines. Russian military experts claim the Poseidon missiles can produce radioactive tsunami waves over 1,600 feet high. True News will ask the question tonight, did Russia use the Poseidon nuclear torpedo on Japan's Fukushima coast in 2011? First, we will look at some recent news headlines from World War III. And we'll start with this one from Newsweek. Zelensky advisor issues warning to Putin. Escalation is inevitable.
So Ukrainian presidential advisor Mikhail Podolyak has warned that the war in Ukraine could eventually reach Russia's largest cities, including the capital, Moscow. An internal escalation of the war in Russia is inevitable, and different strikes will be carried out on different targets, Podolyak said in an interview with Russian blogger and journalist Michael Naki. So the gauntlet is being laid down here to Russia.
I mean, I don't know what we say, Doc. I mean, what Zelensky's mouthpiece said today is, we have plans to hit Moscow and St. Petersburg.
Right.
I don't know how anybody can think that this is not going to explode into a nuclear war. I mean, Ukraine, if they use Western missiles to hit Moscow and St. Petersburg, the fight is on.
Right. Now, if they had them, they would have already used them, wouldn't they? That means they don't have them.
Correct. But they want them, and they will beg for them. And they will get them just like they got the tanks.
Got everything else.
And it also verifies what Putin and Lavrov and all the other Russian leaders have said, Medvedev and so forth, that the reason Russia felt compelled to go into Ukraine is because of their fear that Ukraine will get their hands on NATO missiles. And if they ever get the missiles, they will use them. Well, this is verifying what the Ukrainians planned to do all along. But again, it got bumped up another notch today. A threat to strike Moscow and St. Petersburg. And Doc, it's every week. It's getting worse. And it's more dire, it's more serious every single week. And we're racing into a nightmare. It's like the American people are just sleepwalking. The Europeans are sleepwalking into a disaster. And most of them completely unaware that this is happening. Ukraine's Zelensky, this is from France 24, Zelensky wants long-range missiles and jets from the West.
So
why not? You're getting everything else you want.
They'll get that too.
And within a short time, he's going to be asking for tactical nukes.
This is inevitable, yes.
They're going to ask for tactical nukes. Maybe March, April of this year, he will be begging for tactical nukes. I don't see how we get through this year without an all-out nuclear war or some type of exchange of nuclear weapons, whether it's limited or all out. I don't see, because there's nobody speaking with voices of reason. I'll give you an example. Well, I will have to take this back. Donald Trump today said, here's his tweet on his, well, what do you call it?
A truth.
Huh?
You called it a truth.
A truth. Yes. It's a truth on Truth Social. First come the tanks, then come the nukes, get this crazy war ended. Now, so easy to do. I agree, Mr. Trump. I'm glad you said it. And somebody needs to get this message across to the NATO leaders. But I want to play a soundbite from the Sean Hannity radio program. This is not his Fox news channel program, but his radio program. And his guest was Bill O'Reilly, the former Fox News host and host of a current radio show. But Sean Hannity, in this clip, was calling on Joe Biden to threaten Russia with nuclear war.
Yes.
Sean Hannity has always been pushing for war. War in the Middle East, war with Iran, war with Syria, war with Iraq. He wants war. He likes war.
Well, he's been double pinned by the CIA. So this was on his radio show, as Rick said. It wasn't on his TV show. Radio show is heard on about 700 stations around the country, and so usually on AM flamethrowers, depending on where you're at. So this message is out there, and it just is so blatant, the warmongering going on here.
Yeah. So Sean Hannity is an influential conservative Republican, and a lot of middle-class Americans listen to him and form their opinions based around his opinion.
Right.
And what they heard was Sean Hannity saying, let's nuke Russia.
And Bill O'Reilly was trying to dial him back in this conversation, as you'll hear. Let's play this clip. You'll hear about 2 minutes of Sean Hannity and Bill O'Reilly in this exchange.
Boris Johnson came out this weekend, and he's the only one that said what I said. They're not fighting this war to win it. That means it becomes another quagmire, another Afghanistan.
Careful.
I don't want America in these long, protracted conflicts, Bill.
Well, either do I, but you've got to be careful with this because you've got an unstable dictator with nuclear weapons. You've got to be careful with this.
How do you be careful, Bill? We're going to give them money. We're going to give them tanks. We're going to escalate. And at what point do we say, we've got nuclear weapons too, Vladimir? You fire at us, we'll destroy you.
Come on. Look, it's an incremental policy. This is the one thing that the Biden administration hasn't screwed up. All right? It's an incremental policy. So we waited to see if the Ukrainians were going to stand up and fight for their freedom, which they did. Now, Ukraine is a corrupt country. Just because you're fighting a foreign invader doesn't mean you're not corrupt. They're corrupt. And that's, again, something everybody's going to have to accept. It's always been that way in that country. Always. All right? So the United States says, all right, they're going to fight, so we're going to incrementally increase our aid, both monetarily and military, to make it very, very difficult for Putin to win. And that has worked. That has worked. Putin's losing over there.
Bill, I beg to differ with you. If it was working, Putin would be out.
No.
Putin has systematically dismantled the infrastructure of that country and has been targeting innocent men, women, and children and apartment buildings and schools and all infrastructure. There's barely a country to go back to and to live in.
Just disagree with that. Kyiv controls 80% of the country, the actual land, and they'll be able to rebuild. Of course, we'll pay for a lot of it. But Putin is really taking a beating both inside and outside Russia. He's a pariah outside. He's finished. He's never going to go to G7 anymore. He's done. All right, the Russian economy, the ruble, all of it is really in trouble. And it's just a matter of time before either this guy dies, because people say he's got a malady,
somebody could take him out.
It throws him, which is what the United States wants. They want.
Well, let me ask you this, Bill. It wouldn't be that difficult. You know the possibilities are existent, and that is geographically it's very possible. Why doesn't Ukraine start hitting Russian targets, Bill? That's how you fight wars. You don't keep it just in your own backyard.
So there's Sean Hannity saying, let's bomb Moscow. Let's bomb St. Petersburg.
Yeah, let's hit Russian targets now.
So, I know a lot of our audience. I know you like Sean Hannity, and you're a fan of him, but he's a warmonger, and he's going to get you killed. It's just that simple. He's a warmonger. And he's been a highly influential voice for war as long as he has been a media personality.
And he became a media personality as a result of 9/11. So keep that in mind.
That's right.
There were several big names born out of 9/11. You've got Glenn Beck, you've got Sean Hannity, a couple others, but he's the big dog.
And And in the run-up to the Iraq War, Sean Hannity, every single night on Fox News, just spewed out one propaganda lie after another to get the American people fired up to invade Iraq, to go get those weapons of mass destruction, which didn't turn out to be there.
Right.
He's doing the same thing now. He's still working the propaganda line. He's still fed a script. I don't know who writes a script, but he reads what he's told to say. And what he's told to say is, we have to have a war. But this time, Sean Hannity could get us all killed.
Because this time he's calling for a nuclear war.
Yes.
He actually called for a nuclear strike on Russia.
Yes, he did. And the people who watch Fox News, you need to understand this, that people like Sean Hannity are promoting nuclear war. So
the Russians are monitoring this too.
Yes.
So they're thinking, what are the Americans thinking? What are they talking about? One of their largest media personalities is talking about nuclear war with Russia.
That's right. Now, Newsweek reported just a few days ago Putin's Poseidon and the radioactive tidal wave of death. So Newsweek has finally picked up on the story of the Poseidon nuclear tsunami torpedo.
Right.
That is capable of producing a tsunami wave about 1,600 feet high. Not only just a tsunami wave, but a radioactive tsunami wave. That as that water goes over landmass, it's radioactive, and it will destroy that land for 1,000 years. So Newsweek picked up a story on it this week, and is talking about the fact that, as I said in the beginning, the first batch of missiles, of torpedoes, have been delivered to the naval yards in Russia.
Right. The story goes, Russia has made its first batch of nuclear-capable torpedoes that are said to be so powerful that they could cause radioactive ocean swells and huge nuclear tsunamis that could destroy coastal cities in the U.S. or its allies. Now, the Poseidon torpedoes are due to be delivered to the special purpose nuclear power submarine Belgorod, and that was reported by TASS earlier that week. This was actually a story from last week. A pro-Vladimir Putin TV host, Dmitry Kiselov, said in May last year, this would have been May of 2022, that these torpedoes would be capable of causing a 500-meter or 1,600-foot high tidal wave of radioactive seawater, and that they could plunge Britain into the depths of the sea. Of course, we covered that story as well last year. We've actually been talking about this particular topic for quite a while because no one else seems to talk about it, do they, Rick?
No? When did we start?
Well, I remember us talking about it initially, the first inkling of a tidal wave torpedo back in July of 2016 when we were still on radio. We hadn't transitioned to TV yet. And
almost 8 years ago.
Right. And what had prompted it is there was this explosion something that had occurred off the coast of Florida. And it had registered as an earthquake. It was peaking out, Richter scales here in the state of Florida. And, it was kind of an unexplained event that took place out in the water. And that prompted us to start searching, well, what could cause something like that? And we stumbled across a story about that Russia was developing a tsunami torpedo. So we've been talking about this for a long, long time. But we're talking about it. Turns out maybe they've had the technology for a lot longer than we thought. But as we look at the stories that, especially within the past year, now it's become a lot more serious.
Yeah. If you were watching, back in 2016, we were still audio. So if you were listening to TruNews in 2016 and forward, you've heard us talk about this tsunami torpedo. It was always futuristic. It's not futuristic anymore. They have delivered them to their submarines. They're ready for combat use. So the things that we used to say could happen someday, that someday is now,
Right.
2023. And the Russians are preparing to put them to use. We're going to talk about this tsunami torpedo for a few minutes here. This next story is from April 2021. Russia tests a weapon that creates tsunami, a radioactive tsunami. Another example that we've been bringing this up throughout the years. Another story from the Times of London, May 22. Russian nuclear tsunami will wipe out Britain. Kremlin-backed media threatens.
Right. So Russian state television has issued a chilling warning that Moscow could wipe out Britain with a nuclear tsunami in retaliation for supporting Ukraine. In his Sunday evening primetime show, Channel 1 anchor Dmitry Kiselov said a strike by Russia's Poseidon nuclear underwater drone could turn Britain into a wasteland by drowning the country in a 500-meter tidal wave of radioactive seawater. The explosion of this thermonuclear torpedo by Britain's coastline will cause a giant tsunami wave. Having passed over the British Isles, it will turn whatever might be left of them into a radioactive wasteland. We actually have a clip from that particular event with Dmitry Kiselov talking about the tsunami wave over Britain.
Президент Путин привел наши ядерные силы сдерживания в особый режим несения дежурства. Попросту говоря, мы сейчас наготове. А что будет после слов Бориса Джонсона об ответном ударе по России? Вообще на Британских островах, похоже, заговариваются. Зачем грозить ядерным оружием бескрайней России, сидя на, в общем-то, маленьком острове? Остров столь мал, что лишь одной ракеты «Сармат» достаточно, чтобы его утопить раз и навсегда. Все уже подсчитано. Другой вариант – погрузить Британию в морскую пучину российский подводный робот-беспилотник «Посейдон». Он приближается к цели на километровой глубине со скоростью 200 км в час. Нет никакого способа остановить этот подводный дрон. Боеголовка на нем мощностью до 100 мегатонн. Взрыв этой термоядерной торпеды у берегов Британии поднимет гигантскую волну, цунами высотой до 500 метров. Такой водяной шквал является еще и носителем экстремальных доз радиации. Пройдя над Британскими островами, он превратит то, что от них, может быть, еще и останется, в радиоактивную пустыню, надолго непригодную хоть для чего.
No mistake about what he said they're going to do. Hey, we got two options. We have a Sarmat ICBM that could, just sink the island to the bottom of the sea, or we might just take the sea over top of you. Now, that was 1 year ago. The Russians were talking 1 year ago, warning Great Britain, you keep messing with us, we're going to show you what we can do to you. Where we are today, Doc, is what I said yesterday. I gave the analogy of, your homeowner, maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 acre property, a cartel gang is on your property line. They're planning a home invasion.
Yes.
The numbers are getting bigger. There's more and more gang members coming, more guns coming, more weapons coming. They're forming a line on your property line. You tell them what the red lines are. You tell them not to cross the line. They shoot your dog. They throw a rock through your window. They cut the power off to your home. The homeowner doesn't go out on the porch waving his arms and yelling and screaming, "Get off my property." No, he calmly loads his firearm and prepares for the fight. Last year, the Russians were telling us, don't cross these lines. This is what we have. These are the weapons we have. This year, they're calmly loading the clips into their guns, meaning They're putting the warheads on the missiles. They're putting the torpedoes in the submarines. They're not going to shout about it.
Right.
They're not going to yell about it. They're not going to threaten. They're going to do it. They're just going to do it. They said, Lavrov said yesterday, red lines are a thing of the past.
Right. We're past red lines now.
Yeah. You already broke the red lines. We told you we're going to fight if you cross the red lines. So if people are saying, well, the Russians aren't fighting yet. No, you're totally misunderstanding what they're saying, what they're doing. They're going to hit you when you're not expecting it to happen.
On their terms.
On their terms.
And on their timetable.
That's right. That's where we're at. Now, I will take you back in time, and I'll tell you how this came about. Last night, I got a phone call from an old friend. I've not physically seen him for about 20 years.
Right.
But we talk on the phone once in a while. And so he called me last night. He watches TruNews. His name's Nate, lives in Colorado. And so we were talking last night around 9 p.m. And it was 73 degrees at 9 p.m. in my house and 5 below zero at his house. All right. So, but he was talking about what he had just seen on TruNews last night. He called just to talk about it. And I brought up somebody named Vladimir Zhirinovsky. He was a Russian politician. He died last year, I think, of COVID. But he was a wild one. Okay, he was a member of the Duma. Had a big following in Russia. Kind of the working man's Donald Trump.
Okay.
He didn't have the money, but he had the attitude. The attitude. You know, he had swag. So I brought him up, and my friend Nate said, Rick, what I'm hearing from you is the Russians have already used the Poseidon. They've already tested it. So I'm going to walk you through this, and I'm going to show you what my friend Nate and I came to the realization last night, that the Russians have already tested this on a country. We're going to start with an article. This is March 2011. Doc, I remember reporting this on TruNews. Doc, if you go back and find the, let's see, March 8, 2011.
So probably March 9th.
If you found the 8th or 9th of March 2011 episode of TruNews, you'll hear me talking about this story. I clearly remember this story. I knew where to go get it today to bring it back. It was stuck in my head. I remembered this story very clearly. Japan must develop nuclear weapons, warns Tokyo governor. And this was the politician at that time, the governor of Tokyo, was a hardliner. He wanted to rebuild Japan's military empire.
Now, and remember, in that time frame for our audience, we were still a long ways off from even considering rebuilding Japan's military. Now we're full throttle into it.
Oh, yes.
Japan and the U.S. just 2 weeks ago signed brand new defense agreements.
Yes, that was a very radical statement. But Doc, he didn't say Japan needs an army.
No.
He said Japan needs nuclear weapons.
Right.
And then he named the countries that they would use them on.
Yes. So Tokyo's outspoken governor says his country, which suffered history's only nuclear attack, should build nuclear weapons to counter the threat from fast-rising China. In an interview with The Independent, Shintaro Ishihara said Japan could develop nuclear weapons within a year and send a strong message to the world. So he goes on to say all our enemies, China, North Korea, and Russia, all close neighbors, have nuclear weapons. Is there another country in the world in a similar situation? Now, something for our audience to realize too is technically Russia and Japan are still fighting World War II.
Yes, they've never settled World War II.
Right.
And
Now-
we heard that with our own ears ourselves again at the St. Petersburg meeting back in 2018. And it was the first time I was aware that World War II has not been settled.
Right, and it all hinges on the Kuril Islands, and that has not been settled.
Because Shinzo Abe was on the stage, and Putin and Shinzo Abe, who got assassinated last year.
Right.
But Putin and Shinzo Abe were talking about,
hey, let's settle
let's
this.
just settle World War II. Let's get an
right
agreement.
now.
Yes, let's
And
do
Putin
it
was
right
saying,
now.
let's settle it right now.
Yeah. So in this 2011 article, the governor of Tokyo, Mr. Ishihara, called Russia an enemy.
Right.
He said, we need nuclear weapons. And then he said, Japan can have nuclear weapons within a year. How could that be, Doc?
The U.S. would give it to them.
No, I don't believe so.
Or they develop their own?
Yes. This is where I'm going with this. I believe what he leaked out was their capability of producing nuclear warheads rapidly.
Now I know where you're going.
You
with
get
all
it?
this. Yes.
You see the drift where we're going?
Yes. So.
All right, so he says all our enemies, China, North Korea, Russia, have nuclear weapons. He goes, the article says the right-wing governor added that a nuclear-armed Japan would also win more respect from Russia, which seized 4 Japanese-owned islands during the Second World War. That's the thing, that the Kuril Islands that we heard Putin and Shinzo Abe talking about on stage. Goes on and says, and he advised his constitutionally pacifist nation to scrap restrictions on the manufacture and sale of weapons. Quote, we should develop sophisticated weapons and sell them abroad. Japan made the best fighters in the world before America crushed the industry. We could get that back. Well, what brought about the crushing of that industry?
War.
Yeah, Pearl Harbor, okay? Now, let's remember the date of that article, March
9th.
8th.
Well, yeah, March 8th.
March 8, 2011. Now the next one is a short video, and the date is March 11, 2011. 3 days later. Let's watch.
All across northern Japan, they felt it. A violent magnitude 9.0 earthquake on March 11, 2011. It was centered about 80 miles offshore, and tsunami warnings went up immediately. In coastal cities, people knew what to do next: run to higher ground. It's from these vantage points on hills and in tall buildings that incredible footage was captured. In Kesanuma, people retreated to a high-rise rooftop and could only watch in horror as tsunami waves inundated their city, knocking buildings into rubble and mixing into a kind of tsunami soup filled with vehicles, building parts, and contents. Seawater cascaded over sea walls and into cities. This video shows the water rushing over an 18-foot seawall into Kamaishi City. The seawall here was the world's deepest and largest, but not enough for the magnitude of the March 11 disaster. It was the largest quake ever known in Japan, and one of the 5 largest recorded in the world. More than 28,000 people are confirmed dead or missing.
That was March 11th, 2011.
3 days after the governor of Tokyo said Russia is an enemy, and we must have nuclear weapons to deal with Russia, and we can have them within 1 year. Where would they get the uranium to make nuclear warheads? From a nuclear power plant.
Yes.
Called Fukushima. Where am I going with this? I think the Russians tested their weapon
Smaller version.
a smaller version that was not radioactive. They produced an earthquake and a tsunami.
Well, now, it could have been radioactive because what better way to hide the radioactivity than to say that the nuclear power plant, because it's still spewing out radiation to this day, right?
That's true. That's a good point. That's a good point. Now, we're going to take it one more level. So I mentioned Mr. Zhirinovsky, Vladimir Zhirinovsky. He was a flamboyant, colorful Russian politician. He died last year from COVID. Again, Doc, this is a video. We didn't show the video because when this happened in 2011, we were a radio show, podcast. So I couldn't show it, but I remember watching the video online, and I knew exactly where to go find it today. I found it last night because I remember in 2011, Zhirinovsky, he did this Russian television news interview, and he was drunk. He was drunk. His tie was open, his shirt was open. He was looped, and he's running his mouth on live television. And the Russian news presenter was like, "Whoa, what are you saying?" And he was getting wound up, and he said some things. I don't think he was supposed to say it unless he was given the green light. If they gave him a bottle of vodka and said, "Go on television and say it." But I heard it, and I made note of it, and I reported it on TruNews in March of 2011. Here is that Russian TV interview.
При этом Вашингтон не имеет будущего, Америка искусственное государство рухнет, Европа старая, так сказать, уже континент, который никакой роли не играет, Китай на пороге взрыва. И остается космическая держава Россия с огромными деньгами, ресурсами и новым оружием, о котором еще никто не знает. Любую часть планеты уничтожим в течение 15 минут. Ни одного взрыва, ни одного, так сказать, всплеска, там, луча какого-то лазерного, там, молния. Нет, тихо, спокойненько. Целые континенты будут спать вечным сном.
А может вы нам подробнее расскажете, как вы собираетесь это делать?
Все остальное. Вот цунами сейчас, Япония. Вы Курилы хотели? Вот вы будете разбирать обломки всех ваших зданий. И сдохните все 120 миллионов, если вы еще потребуете Курила от нас. Так и все остальные пусть подумают о своем будущем. О своем будущем пусть думают. Тоже мне еще грузинские вина и там какие-то наблюдатели. А не хотите, чтобы забыли слово Грузия в мире? И будет русско-турецкая граница. Вот подумайте, пускай Саакашвили об этом. То цунами будет другое. В другой части Кавказа.
There was a lot in that statement. That was just part of the interview. That was the juiciest part. How many things did you catch in that statement?
Well, that the Russians were developing weapons that haven't even been revealed yet. But when he made that slip about the tsunami, remember that tsunami, here last week? So he said there will be another tsunami on the other side of the world at some point.
Right.
So basically he's saying Russia caused the tsunami. That's what I'm hearing.
That's exactly what he said. He said we have secret weapons that can put continents to sleep forever. Put an entire continent to sleep. How do you do that? Well, a radioactive tsunami. Several of them coming in from different angles would put the entire continent to sleep. One would quickly take care of Great Britain. It would take more than one for the United States, but one from the East Coast, the Gulf of Mexico, and the West Coast, what's left? You got the center of the country. It's the only thing that survives. And he said there's going to be another tsunami on the other side of the world. But he mentioned Caucasus, which is, at that time, Obama and Israel, they had a war going in Georgia and South Ossetia.
Right. And actually, that interviewer, that was on Georgian television.
Wasn't Russian, it was
Yeah,
Georgian?
Georgian television. So he was making an appearance on Georgian television. So that brings that back around to the Caucasus there.
Should we play that again? Because
It'd probably be a good idea. So
Yeah.
our audience can really absorb, because there's a ton of information in what he said.
yes, this time don't look at his face and his actions and his hands. Just read the English subtitles and absorb what he threatened.
При этом Вашингтон не имеет будущего, Америка искусственное государство рухнет, Европа старая, так сказать, уже континент, который никакой роли не играет, Китай на пороге взрыва. И остается космическая держава Россия с огромными деньгами, ресурсами и новым оружием, о котором еще никто не знает. Любую часть планеты уничтожим в течение 15 минут. Ни одного взрыва, ни одного, так сказать, всплеска, там, луча какого-то лазерного, там, молния. Нет, тихо, спокойненько. Целые континенты будут спать вечным сном.
А может вы нам
И всё
подробнее
останется.
расскажете, как вы
Природа
собираетесь
останется
это
легонькой,
делать?
все остальное. Вот цунами сейчас, Япония. Вы Курилы хотели? Вот вы будете разбирать обломки всех ваших зданий. И сдохните все 120 миллионов, если вы еще потребуете Курила от нас. Так и все остальные пусть подумают о своем будущем. О своем будущем пусть думают. Тоже мне еще грузинские вина и там какие-то наблюдатели. А не хотите, чтобы забыли слово Грузия в мире? И будет русско-турецкая граница. Вот подумайте, пускай Саакашвили об этом. То цунами будет другое. В другой части Кавказа.
Population in Japan in 2011 was 120 million. So he was making the case.
We'll take out all of Japan.
Yes, you want to fight us over the Kuril Islands? We'll take all of you out.
Now, that interview was, I believe it was March. May of 2011.
So two months after the tsunami in Japan.
And he connected the tsunami to Russian secret weapons. So if this is true, if he let something out, and whether intentionally or simply because he was drunk, the point is, excuse me, the Russians experimented with this tsunami weapon and took out Fukushima, which hundreds of thousands of people died.
Right. And they're still dealing with the radioactivity to this day. Rick, do you think Japan was already developing nuclear weapons at Fukushima?
Yes. They had to be. If the governor of Tokyo was confident that they would have nuclear warheads in 1 year.
Because you just don't start a nuclear weapons program and a year later have a nuke. I mean, it takes years of development. You've got...
Okay, so Doc, if the Iranian leader said today, we're going to have nukes in 1 year, would the Israelis take them out immediately?
Absolutely. You know they would. Now, Israel keeps saying they're weeks away from the bomb.
Yes.
But Iran has never
But
said that.
the moment that Israel is absolutely convinced they will have the nukes, Israel will take them out. I believe Russia came to the realization Japan is developing nuclear warheads with uranium from Fukushima. They have classified us as an enemy, and they're going to have nuclear warheads on ICBMs pointed at Moscow, possibly within 1 year. And they just took them out. They didn't take out the whole country.
No.
They demonstrated it to Japan and said, this is what we can do. But he mentioned 120 million people could die, the population of Japan. We never heard another word about Japan developing nuclear warheads after Fukushima. That topic has never come up again. So Russia got their message across to Tokyo. Don't go down that road. Where are we at right now? America. The Russians are telling us. They're telling us what they're going to do. The Russians don't bluff. They don't bluff. They tell you what they're going to do, and then they do it. But they do it when they want to do it, how they want to do it. And they don't ask anybody's permission to do it. They're just going to do it. And our leaders are taking us into a nightmare. Let's see, what does this look like, Doc? This is from Pravda, 2019. Russia's Poseidon torpedo can create 500-meter tsunami wave. This is a video. Let's watch it.
Not so long ago, the Russian Defense Ministry publicly showed a test video of the Poseidon super-large nuclear torpedo, which is said to become the most powerful torpedo in history. It is believed that one Poseidon torpedo can destroy a whole aircraft carrier strike group, while the power of its explosion can generate 500-meter-high tsunami waves. In the Russian army, the Poseidon nuclear torpedo bears the codename Status-6. This is an underwater multi-purpose vehicle. Designed as an underwater thermonuclear weapon, the torpedo has a total length of 24 meters, a diameter of 1.5 meters, and a total weight of 40 tons. It can carry a nuclear warhead of 10 megatons in TNT equivalent. Underwater tests of the atomic energy system of the torpedo were successfully carried out in December of 2018. The Poseidon will be used as a weapon of submarines. The first one of them, the Belgorod submarine, has already been launched and currently undergoes trials. Reportedly, the submarine will carry 6 Poseidons. The range of the torpedo can reach 10,000 kilometers, its maximum underwater speed can exceed 54 knots, and the launch depth can reach 1,000 meters. According to experts, 4 nuclear submarines that can carry Poseidon torpedoes will be enough for the Russian Navy. 2 in the North Sea and 2 in the Pacific Ocean.
Now, I don't know if you caught that, Rick, but I'm sure you did. It has a range of 10,000 kilometers. That's 6,000 miles. So just one of those torpedoes has a range of 6,000 miles. So
The torpedo
itself has a range of 6,000 miles.
So the submarine could be 6,000 miles from the United States of America.
Sitting under the Arctic ice cap.
Okay, you bring up the Arctic because this very next story, you may remember this. This goes back to last fall, and there was concern. We reported this. We showed this article in October of 22. New images reveal Russia's missing submarine in the Arctic, and there was concern because U.S. Intelligence, military intelligence, was tracking this submarine, and then it disappeared, and had them very worried. Where did this thing go? Where's it going to reappear? Another story here. This was from the Daily Mail, October 22.
Same day. And this says, new satellite images show Russia's huge nuclear submarine allegedly carrying apocalyptic and doomsday weapons lurking around the Barents Sea. As fears grow that Vladimir Putin is planning to carry out a nuclear test. The nearly 600-foot Belgorod submarine has disappeared from its home base in the Arctic Circle and may be on its way to the Kara Sea to test the Poseidon nuke. A NATO warning note leaked over the weekend suggested. Satellite images published by Naval News, the previous article that we just saw, showed the submarine is currently operating on the surface in the Arctic.
So Doc, this brings back the memories of this. NATO was concerned last fall that Russia was going to carry out a test of the Poseidon and generate a tsunami wave to show NATO this is what we can do. That's why they were concerned about the submarine disappearing. Russia's not going to carry out a test.
No, they've already tested it.
They've already tested it. It was on Fukushima. They know it works. The next one, this is the Telegraph, January 3rd. Unstoppable nuclear torpedo built by Russia to devastate cities with radioactive waste. Again, it's repeating.
This is just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, go ahead, Doc.
Yeah, Russia has built its first example of an unstoppable nuclear torpedo intended to devastate coastal cities by creating radioactive tsunami, state media has claimed. The first set of Poseidons have been manufactured, and the Belgorod submarine will receive them in the near future. That's coming from TASS, quoting an unnamed defense source. The Poseidon nuclear torpedo has its roots in Soviet plans for a weapon that would be able to render coastal cities on the shores of the United States uninhabitable. The 24-meter-long torpedo was designed to travel up to 80 miles per hour underwater, carrying a 2-megaton nuclear warhead, more than 100 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Christopher Ford, then U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for International Security and Nonproliferation, warned back in 2020 that the weapons were being designed to inundate U.S. coastal cities with radioactive tsunamis.
Now, I want to bring back a post by Dmitry Medvedev just about 2 weeks ago on his Telegram channel.
Right, so this is a part of a longer Telegram post, but this is the quote that really stands out here. The main gift for the new year with the ammunition load of the Zircon missiles went yesterday to the shores of NATO countries. 1,000-kilometer range of their use with hypersonic Mach 9 and the ability to use any charge with a guarantee overcome any missile defense. Let it stand somewhere 100 miles from the coast closer to the Potomac River. So rejoice, this will bring to life anyone who will pose a direct threat to Russia and our allies.
So Medvedev said 2 weeks ago, we're parking missiles in the water close to the Potomac River.
100 miles away.
100 miles away, able to strike Washington, D.C. in seconds.
Now, the reason that stood out to me in particular, Rick, is how far away from Fukushima was the center of whatever occurred out in the ocean? Do you remember how far it was?
The earthquake?
Supposedly earthquake.
I don't know. I don't remember.
It was 80 miles away.
80 miles.
So whatever occurred out in the ocean 80 miles away
generated the
tsunami that hit Fukushima in that area.
So Medvedev said something could be 100 miles away from Washington, D.C.
Yes. It didn't have to strike Washington at all.
But the wave.
Yes.
Just the explosion is in the Atlantic, and the wave will go across the state of Maryland into Washington, D.C.
I mean, that's what can happen. Seriously, this is something to really consider. It could be parked off of, Newport News. It could be parked off Washington, D.C. It could be parked off the shores of New York City.
And could the U.S. conclusively say that Russia destroyed Washington, D.C.? Because it would appear that an earthquake took place and a tsunami wave came over Washington, D.C.
And by the time, if they do figure it out, it'd be way too late. Because there'd be nothing left at that point.
Mm-hmm. We've been given our warnings. That's all I know. Doc, you found one more article a few minutes before we came out here regarding New York City.
Yes. So as we were researching today about tsunamis and possibilities of destruction, I came across an article. This is from 2017. This is actually an art magazine for New York City called The Gothamist. So what do? They feature sculptors, paintings, stuff like that all over the city of New York. So I'd never heard of this before today. This is the first time I'd heard of this, and I thought I was pretty up on speed on things. But there's pictures of this apocalyptic New York City church facade depicts city collapsing beneath giant waves and a nuclear explosion. Now, so you see that. This is on St. John the Divine Church, it's a Catholic church in New York City, and they have these pillars and facades that are carved in to the church itself. And this church is still being built to this day. It's being built for the past 80 years. These particular structures or facades were installed on the church in the 80s. And so they're scrolling through
In the
some of them.
1980s.
Yes, in the 1980s. And so these pillars just, show a giant wave coming over New York City. Another one shows buses and cars and a pile in destruction. You see another one with skulls and crossbones, and it's really a strange apocalyptic scene. I've never heard of this before. Now, is it prophetic? Is it a warning? Is it what is it that the message is trying to be conveyed here? A giant wave over New York City?
Generated from a nuclear explosion.
Right. So you've got to ask yourself now.
Does somebody know?
Does somebody know something? And have they already issued the warning? I think it's interesting that in the image it showed the Twin Towers. Mm-hmm. So it showed the destruction, assuming the Twin Towers were mm-hmm. still there. And that's what stood out to me. But to think that someone went to, the church obviously commissioned this.
Yeah, it spent a lot of money.
Somebody, the Cardinal of New York signed off on these designs. So, I want to see that on the church. It had to go through committees and everything else. And everybody said, oh man, that's great. We love that.
Yeah, it won the vote over the other design ideas.
Right.
Wow. We're going to finish up with a story that Project Veritas released today. Excuse me, I'm tired today. I know it's showing. All right, I'm not going to hide anything. I can't hide stuff. Okay, I'm tired. But Project Veritas released another one of their secret videos. And this one is a research and development executive for Pfizer boasting that Pfizer is using what he called directed evolution.
Yes.
That's the most demonic looking picture of this guy. The guy's weird. But he called it directed evolution of the virus to channel its mutation in a way that Pfizer would know how COVID-19 is going to mutate, and they could get ahead of it and have new vaccines waiting, because it's a cash cow.
That is, of course, if they can keep it under control.
So, Doc, we now, for the first time, have on record a pharmaceutical executive admitting that they have laboratories that experiment with viruses of which they're going to build vaccines. If that isn't criminal activity, what do you call it? Let's watch. Thank you, Project Veritas. We love you guys. Here's the video.
Pfizer ultimately is thinking about mutating COVID?
Well, that is not what we say to the public. No, don't tell anyone this building. You gotta publish, don't tell anyone. You gotta publish, don't tell anyone. Okay? We're exploring, no, you know how the virus keeps mutating?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we're exploring is, why don't we just mutate it ourselves so we can preemptively develop new vaccines, right? So we have to do that. If we're going to do that, though, there's a risk of, as you could imagine, no one wants to be having a pharma company mutating viruses. You have to be, very controlled to make sure that this virus that you mutate doesn't create something that, it goes everywhere.
Something crazy.
Is the way that the virus started and moving on. To be honest, it makes no sense if this virus popped out of nowhere.
Yeah, I know.
Meet Jordan Tristan Walker, a director of research and development strategic operations and mRNA scientific planning at Pfizer.
It sounds like gain of function to me.
I don't know, it's a little bit different. I think it's different. It's definitely not gain of function.
It sounds like it is. I mean, it's okay.
No, directed evolution is very different. Well, you're not supposed to do gain of function research with the viruses. They recommend not. But you do these selected directional mutations to try to see if you can make more potent.
Yeah.
So there is research ongoing about that. I don't know how that's going to work. There might not be any more outbreaks because, Jesus Christ.
The gentleman seems to have absolutely no moral compass at all.
I think a revolving door for all government officials. It's pretty good for the industry, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's bad for everyone else in America.
Why is it bad for everybody else?
Because if the regulators who have to approve our drugs know that once they stop being regulated, they want to go work for the company, they're not going to be as hard on the company. They're doing their job.
If this is the quality of individuals within Pfizer that are making these huge decisions that risk global public health, it's profoundly corrupt.
So we're going to dig into several of these statements that he made with some of the other videos. But this guy is, a high-ranking authority at Pfizer.
In research and development.
Yes. Specifically in the messenger RNA gene therapy.
Look, the guy was creepy. I just thought he was creepy looking. There's something about his aura that's creepy. Sometimes you wonder, are these people human? Are they human? I don't know, Doc.
Or are they possessed?
Possessed? I don't know. Things have become so weird and so evil that you can't assume anymore that an entity talking to you is 100% human.
Yeah, if you put the image from number 35 back up on screen, does this not look demonic to you? Look at that. It's like Rick says, it's beyond creepy. I believe it's a demonic. Now, Jordan Tristan went on to talk about how it's possible for Pfizer to develop new strains of COVID and how simple it is for them to be able to manufacture this. This is number 39 for control. Let's watch this.
That's right. It appears that Pfizer is internally discussing the possibility of mutating the COVID virus themselves in order to tailor a vaccine to sell to the public. Listen to Walker describe in detail just how they would conduct such a scientific experiment. First, in living animals.
So the way that we're thinking about it, don't tell anyone this. You probably shouldn't tell anyone. You probably shouldn't tell anyone. Okay, bro. So the way it would work is like we put them in the virus in these monkeys. Okay. And then we successively cause them to keep infecting each other. And we collect serial samples from them, and then the ones that are more infectious, like the virus, we'll put them in another monkey and you just constantly actively mutate it. That's one way. Okay. Or you can even do directed simulation, which we tend not to prefer. And then you just sample what the different proteins on the surface of the virus look like over time. Okay. So then you can see the mutation, and you can kind of force it to mutate in a certain way you want. Okay. But you have to be very controlled to make sure that this virus that you mutate doesn't create something that goes everywhere.
Something crazy.
Is the way that the virus started and moving on. To be honest, it makes no sense if this virus popped out of nowhere.
Yeah, I know.
COVID virus experimentation on live monkeys? This is unethical, to say the least, and Walker describes those experiments as if they are ongoing and not simply a hypothetical discussion.
But I hope you also notice, too, that this high-level Pfizer exec and scientist did not believe that the virus started in a lab in Wuhan.
That's right.
That means it's a weapon of some kind.
Yes.
So,
by the way, his name is Jordan Tristan Walker.
Yes.
Pfizer's Director of Research and Development, Strategic Operations, and a mRNA scientific planner. So he is an influential person inside Pfizer.
Yes.
He's not a low-level office clerk just down at the bar running his mouth about things he doesn't know anything about.
No, this is a significant individual. Now, this, taking the virus from one monkey to another monkey to another monkey to perfect it, to basically weaponize it, is the very definition of gain-of-function research.
It is.
That's what it is. It's the purpose of changing whatever virus that you're working on into something that you can use and manipulate.
Is anybody outraged about how American pharmaceutical companies, colleges, research labs horrifically abuse animals? I'm an animal lover. Our nation is perverted. We're twisted. We're sick. How many tens of thousands of animals this very hour are being tortured in scientific laboratories in America?
You're right, tens of thousands. For what?
So pharmaceuticals can make more money.
Yeah, and you've got it right there. So Mr. Walker was called on the carpet, well, not called on the carpet, but engaged in the conversation here. And the undercover individual asked him, you know, that sounds an awful lot like gain of function research that you guys are talking about. And he said, well, we're calling it something else. Watch this.
It sounds like gain of function to me.
I don't know, it's a little bit different. I think it's different. It's like it's definitely not gain of function.
Sounds like it is. I mean, it's okay.
No, directed evolution is very different.
Direct evolution?
Directed evolution.
Directed evolution, okay. Well, so, I mean, is that what it is?
Maybe, well, you're not supposed to do gain of function research with the viruses, like, they recommend not. But you do, like, these, like, selected directional mutations to try to see if you can make more potent.
Yeah.
So there is research ongoing about that. I don't know how that's going to work. There might not be any more outbreaks, because, like, Jesus Christ.
So, tell me more, like, what's developing with the whole, virus mutation process?
Well, they're still kind of conducting the experiments on it, but it seems like from what I've heard, they're kind of optimizing it, but they're going slow. They were very cautious, like,
Right.
Obviously, don't want to kind of accelerate it too much.
Yeah.
But I think they're also just trying to do it as an exploratory thing, because you obviously don't want to advertise that you're trying to figure out future mutations.
Right. So, did the whole virus mutation thing, like, come from your executive, Sarah?
No. That came from, like, we have, like, chief scientific officers in, like, the other division.
So this wasn't just something that's happening in some little lab outside of Hoboken, New Jersey. These decisions were being made at the highest levels of Pfizer to implement these new mutations. For what purpose, Rick? Well, they're creating new viruses to create new vaccines. New vaccines mean new money.
Where do you think he is right now since this was released today?
I would think he'd probably have to be hiding at home with all the windows drawn at this point,
my guess
with his cell phone on.
My guess is he's sharing a cage with a monkey. They're doing experiments on him. What do you think is going to happen to his career after today? What does Pfizer do with it? This is the second Pfizer executive in months that has shot off their mouth and told us things that we suspected. Remember the woman in Europe who said we didn't do any testing on humans?
No, they just rolled it out. They unpacked it and rolled it out. The ongoing conversation reveals the real reason why Pfizer is in this business. It's not to cure disease. It's not to make people feel better. It's to make money.
It will make the investors feel better.
Yes. So watch this. This is number 41 for control.
What's the goal for Pfizer of doing that?
So probably what they want to do is, like, to try to figure out, to some extent, like, there's all these new strains of variants that just pop up. Why don't we try to, like, catch them before they pop up in nature, and we can develop a vaccine prophylactically for, like, new variants.
Yeah.
So that's why they're thinking, like, if you do it controlled in the lab, then you say, oh, this is an epitope. And so then if it comes out later on, like, in the public, we already have a vaccine kind of working on it.
Oh my God. That's perfect. Like, isn't that the best business model though? Like, just control nature before nature even happens itself, right?
Yeah. If it works.
What do you mean if it works?
Because, like, some of the times there were just mutations that pop up, right? And we're not prepared for it, like with Delta or Omicron,
right,
and things like that. So who knows? I mean, either way, it's gonna be a cash cow. COVID will probably be a cash cow for us for a while going forward. Like,
yeah.
I obviously like.
Well, I think the whole, like, research of the viruses and mutating it, like, would be the ultimate, like, cash cow.
Yeah, it'd be perfect.
It's a cash cow. Yes. How many billions did they make?
They're still raking it in every single day.
And people are dying. Heart attacks, strokes, all over the world. And the Pfizer executives and the Pfizer investors don't care. Right. And they're planning more more vaccines because they're actually orchestrating, developing in their own laboratories the mutant viruses.
Right. So the question might be out there from someone in the audience that says, well, why doesn't the government do something about all of this? You've got this expose here. You've got this going on. Well, the reason why the government doesn't do anything is because the government is fully in bed with the pharmaceutical companies. Mr. Walker talks about a revolving door that occurs in all of big pharma. You've got people that work in government, and after they leave government, they go work at one of the big pharma companies, or the other way around. They leave big pharma and go work in the government.
Well, the same thing happens over at the Pentagon.
Right, and he brings that out too.
Generals, they retire, and then they get a job at a defense contractor.
Right. So let's watch this final clip from Project Veritas where it talks about that revolving door.
Revolving door for all government officials.
Wow.
Yeah, for any industry though. So like in the pharma industry, all the government officials who review our drugs, they come work for pharma companies. Like the military, all the Army and Defense government officials eventually go work for the defense companies afterwards.
How do you feel about that revolving door?
It's pretty good for the industry, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's bad for everyone else in America.
Why is it bad for everybody else?
Because if the regulators have to approve our drugs, know that once they stop being regulated, they want to come work for the company, they're not going to be as hard for the company. They're doing their job.
Right.
So imagine you're a regulator within the government. And if you give a favorable review to a particular line of research or a product that the pharmaceutical companies have produced, then wouldn't that make you more likely to be considered for employment with the pharmaceutical companies?
Of course.
He was a good guy to us. He threw some favor our way.
What amazes me about this guy from Pfizer is he's so comfortable with the corruption that he's not even attempting to hide it. He's talking so freely to a stranger. And, obviously they're sitting in a bar, they're drinking, but he's not guarding his words. He's not he's telling everything he knows. He's so comfortable with the corruption that's going on inside Pfizer and the U.S. government. He doesn't even worry about anybody knowing about it because they know nothing will happen because the government and the corporations are one. That's called fascism. It's not communism, it's fascism. When corporations and government are united, we have a fascist system. And he's not worried. Because
and now it's techno-biofascism. I mean, that's where we're at.
That's good.
One of our researchers just messaged me here. Apparently there was another video that Project Veritas last night released. James O'Keefe confronted Walker, I think in a restaurant or bar, and Mr. Walker grabbed the iPad, destroyed the iPad,
You mean he took it out of his hands?
Yes, so we're seeing, I don't have it up here yet, but I'm just someone who's working in a company that's literally trying to help the public. That was his response to James O'Keefe.
If he grabbed personal property and broke it.
Yeah, it says, Pfizer director physically assaults James O'Keefe and Veritas staff, destroys iPad showing undercover recordings about mutating COVID virus. Oh, here we go. So there we go. So,
well, that's pretty good evidence for a court trial.
So,
how do you explain that? And how does he explain that to his supervisors at Pfizer?
Well, this is quite the story that Project Veritas has brought out. Obviously, he knows that there's big trouble there that's happening because of the video and the other undercover video. So,
wow, I would say his career's over.
He may have an accident in the next few days. Better watch out.
He knows a lot. He knows a lot.
I wouldn't be listening to radio in the bathtub. If I was him.
He could disappear very quickly. We had a couple more stories. This involves Hunter Biden. Oh, by the way, did Fox News ever release the Paul Pelosi video last night.
I don't recall seeing it. It was supposed to come out.
You know, they filed actions with the San Francisco Police Department to get the videos, and they announced last night that a judge ordered, I heard it driving home, that a judge ordered the San Francisco Police Department to release everything.
Right, all the video from
but I've
both
never
officers.
I've never seen the video. You know, I looked around this morning and I haven't seen it, so I was just wondering if anybody has seen it. So this next story is from the New York Post. Hunter Biden's art dealer must hand over sale information, according to Congressman James Comer. Doc, this is interesting. I was listening yesterday on the radio driving here, and they were talking about possible Chinese money in the purchase of Hunter Biden's art.
I mean, to me, it's obvious. He's not an artist.
Well,
Have you seen some of the stuff? It looks like a fifth grader.
Well, he was asking $500,000 for his paintings.
And getting it. And getting it.
Well, now the man who orchestrated, brokered some of the deals with anonymous buyers, he's being subpoenaed to a U.S. House committee hearing, and he's going to have to tell them who bought the paintings.
Right. So the House Oversight Committee is demanding that first son Hunter Biden's art dealer hand over sales information and book an interview with congressional investigators about possible influence peddling. The panel's chairman, Representative James Comer of Kentucky, sent a letter Wednesday to Soho Gallery owner George Burgess after he brazenly brushed off an initial request last month. He said, despite being a novice artist, Hunter Biden received exorbitant amounts of money selling his artwork. The buyers' identities remain unknown, and you appear to be the sole record keeper of these lucrative transactions, Comer wrote to Burgess. For example, you have advertised that Hunter Biden's latest artwork ranges in price from $55,000 to $225,000. It is concerning that President Biden's son is the recipient of anonymous high-dollar transactions, potentially from foreign buyers, with no accountability or oversight other than you. Now, the letter asked for Burgess to provide records by February 8th and schedule a transcribed interview with committee staff by the 15th. If Burgess refuses to comply with the request, the Republican majority on the committee can vote to compel the evidence and testimony with a subpoena, and continued stonewalling would open Burgess to potential criminal charges at that point. Now, Representative Comer is requesting all documents and communications between you, George Burgess Gallery, or agents thereof, and the White House, and all documents and communications between you, George Burgess Gallery, or agents thereof, and Hunter Biden. So now we've brought the White House into this as well. Representative Comer also demands documents sufficient to show who purchased Hunter Biden's artwork and all documents and communications pertaining to setting the prices for Hunter Biden's art, which I don't think is really art in the first place. But to me, this seems so obvious. I mean, when the story was out that he was selling artwork and everything, and it's getting some extravagant amount of money, I mean, come on. The Keystone Cops could figure this one out. But
it's like the money that went into the Biden Center, his think tank, the anonymous $50 million from China. Anonymous Chinese donors gave the University of Pennsylvania $50 million weeks after they made the decision that they were going to have a think tank named for Joe Biden. All of a sudden, money shows up. $50 million, Doc. And nobody thinks that's suspicious.
And some of those are still anonymous to this day.
I think they're all anonymous. The Chinese money's anonymous. So now they're looking to find out, did Chinese money come in for the art? Were the Chinese propping up Hunter Biden?
And don't forget the story, was it last week where we talked about where Hunter Biden is living at now, the $50,000 a month place, and the Secret Service is having to rent the $60,000 a month place next door, where that money appears to be managed, massaged, funneled, whatever you want to call it, through that high-powered Hollywood attorney. So, listen, the Biden crime syndicate has been around for a very, very long time. This didn't just happen a couple years ago. Joe Biden's been making money off politics, since the 60s and 70s. And he lied all his way through to get it, too.
And he's got a network of accomplices to help him facilitate these deals. The last one we got two more. The one has to do with House Speaker McCarthy. And he booted from House committees, the House Intelligence Committee. He booted Adam Schiff off of the committee and Eric Swalwell. Swalwell had an affair with a Chinese spy. Schiff was just a liar. He is a liar. There's no
liar, a thief.
There's no nice words for Adam Schiff. He's a liar, and he has no business being on the Intelligence Committee of the House of Representatives. So Speaker McCarthy was questioned by a reporter, how dare you take them off of the committee? And what they were referring to was this George Santos.
Right.
And so the reporter was saying, well, Santos has lied, so, why don't you deal with Santos? Well, McCarthy put this reporter in his or her place. I don't know if it was a male or female reporter. He dealt with this very strongly. He was very impressed with it. Here's the video.
Okay, let me be very clear and respectful to you. You ask me a question. When I answer it, it's the answer to your question. You don't get to determine whether I answer your question or not, okay? In all respect. Thank you. No, let's answer her question. You just raised a question. I'm going to be very clear with you. The Intel Committee is different. You know why? Because what happens in the Intel Committee, you don't know. What happens in the Intel Committee, although the secrets are going on in the world, other members of Congress don't know. What did Adam Schiff do as the chairman of the Intel Committee? What Adam Schiff did, use his power as a chairman and lie to the American public. Even the Inspector General said it. When Devin Nunes put out a memo, he said it was false. When we had a laptop, he used it before an election to be politics and say that it was false and said it was the Russians. When he knew different, when he knew the intel, if you talk to John Radcliffe, DNI, he came out ahead of time and says there's no intel to prove that, and he used his position as chairman, knowing he has information the rest of America does not, and lied to the American public. When a whistleblower came forward, he said he did not know the individual, even though his staff had met with him and set it up. So no, he does not have a right to sit on that. But I will not be like Democrats and play politics with these, where they removed Republicans from committees and all committees. So yes, he can serve on a committee, but he will not serve on intel, because it goes to the national security of America. And I will always put them first, all right? And if you want to talk about Swalwell, let's talk about Swalwell, because you have not had the briefing that I had. I had the briefing and Nancy Pelosi had the briefing from the FBI. The FBI never came before this Congress to tell the leadership of this Congress that Eric Swalwell had a problem with a Chinese spy until he served on intel. So it wasn't just us who were concerned about it. The FBI was concerned about putting a member of Congress on the Intel Committee that has the rights to see things that others don't because of his knowledge and relationship with a Chinese spy. They brought it to the works of the leaders. I've got that briefing. So I do not believe he should sit on that committee. And I believe there's 200 other Democrats that can serve on that committee. So this has nothing to do with Santos. Santos is not on the Intel Committee. But you know what? Those voters elected Schiff, even though he lied. Those voters elected Swalwell, even though he lied to the American public too. So you know what? I'll respect his voters too, and they'll serve on committees. But they will not serve on a place that has national security relevance, because integrity matters to me. That's the answer to your question.
Well done. Well said. I'm impressed with Speaker McCarthy so far. He's doing well. He put Schiff and Swalwell in their place. Now, the next video features Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State and former CIA director. He was on Fox News, and he was asked also about Adam Schiff being kicked off the House Intelligence Committee. This is what he said.
And then he went on to say a whole lot more, and I felt it was fantastic because he was underscoring the fact that in stark contrast to Rep. Schiff's prior behavior, what goes on in the Intel Committee is actually sacred, and it serves a sacred purpose, which is protecting national security. What say you about the Speaker's decisions?
So I had the incredible privilege to serve on that committee. It covers the most classified, most difficult stuff. Not every member of Congress gets to see the information that the Intelligence Committee sees. And Adam Schiff lied to the American people. And during my time as CIA Director and Secretary of State, I know that he leaked classified information that had been provided to him. Now, the fact that Adam Schiff was the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee almost ruined that committee. It serves an incredibly important function for the American people. Speaker McCarthy got this one exactly right. Adam Schiff should be nowhere near serving on the Intelligence Committee. I don't think he should be seeing classified information.
And sir, given that he leaked information, that's a felony at minimum, up to treason. Why was there no accountability for the millions of people watching right now? How is that being allowed to go further, let alone giving him the fodder for him to complain about being removed from the committee?
So it's a complicated process, right? It's difficult to pin down precisely what happened, but I could tell you that when we provided information to him and to his staff, it ended up in places it shouldn't have been with alarming regularity. And we could see it. So in the end, I decided I held back information from them. As a result of that, I just didn't have confidence that providing that information, which was my obligation to work with the congressional branch, right, to work with them, I didn't feel comfortable we could do that. And so I've been troubled by Mr. Schiff's behavior. He told the American people repeatedly, oh, there's more to know about the Russia hoax. We suffered for 2.5 years in the administration. There's more to come. He knew it wasn't true. He went after Devin Nunes in ways that were indecent when he knew what Representative Nunes had written was true. He was out telling a whopper. And you shouldn't be around the Intelligence Committee when you can't manage both classified information and the truth.
Well, Mr. Pompeo's on his current book tour and his pre-presidential run, and so, but he was telling the truth about Adam Schiff for sure. And so,
all right, the last one features Louisiana Senator John Kennedy, Republican from Louisiana, and in this video, he's questioning a woman who has been nominated by Joe Biden for a federal judgeship, and he questions her about her knowledge
of the Constitution.
Of you're talking about the U.S. Constitution?
Yes.
A federal judge nominee.
Now, let me ask you something. When you were in high school, I don't know what it was like in Maryland, but in high school, did you have to take a Constitution class in high school?
We had a civics government class, yeah.
But in Missouri, in order to graduate, you had to take a Constitution class. It was, a semester-long class. It was kind of, they did part of your history requirement. But one semester had to be on the U.S. Constitution. And we had to go off, we had to, be able to do the preamble. We had to name the various categories of the articles of the Constitution. We didn't have to memorize all the amendments or anything like that, but we had to know generally what...
you had to read it.
Right. You had to go through it. You had to write essays on it, all this other stuff. But we had a full semester of it.
Well, certainly if you're nominated for a federal judgeship, you've read the Constitution.
Well, I would hope so. But I would hope that if I can remember stuff from that class all these years later, and I don't have the world's best memory, why doesn't a judge remember ever reading or studying the Constitution?
Because she never read or studied the Constitution.
This is actually embarrassing. Well, watch this.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to all of you. Judge on the far end. Tell me what Article 5 of the Constitution does.
Article 5 is not coming to mind at the moment.
Okay. How about Article 2?
Neither is Article 2.
Okay. Do you know what purposivism is?
In my 12 years as an assistant attorney general and my 9 years serving as a judge, I was not faced with that precise question. We are the highest trial court in Washington state, so I'm frequently faced with issues that I'm not familiar with, and I thoroughly review the law, research, and apply the law to the facts presented to me.
Well, you're going to be faced with it if you're confirmed. I can assure you of that.
How can you say that you are an expert in the law when you don't even have knowledge of the bedrock foundation of all law, which is the U.S. Constitution? All laws proceed the way it's supposed to work. All law is supposed to proceed from that bedrock foundation of the U.S. Constitution. But she has no idea what all the various articles about.
Well, okay, so her defense is, well, I'm a state judge.
Right.
Well, the state judges don't read the Constitution?
But
does the state of Washington have a Constitution? He should have asked her questions about the state Constitution of Washington.
Right.
I bet she's never read it either.
But even the Constitution itself says to the states, you can't say something that violates the U.S. Constitution. So you at least have to know what the U.S. Constitution says to make sure you're not violating it. To me, that was really eye-opening. So what are they judging up there in Washington State? Drag queen contest? I mean, they're obviously not judging the law because they don't know the basic foundation of the law.
But she's going to render decisions that she's going to declare unconstitutional.
Right,
but
when she doesn't read the Constitution.
Precisely. She has an agenda. They have agendas. Judges are for politics, to push agendas, not to enforce the Constitution. But hey, this has been underway, Doc, for decades. The law schools, everything they've eroded the Constitution for decades.
Now, I got to hand it to John Kennedy there. Every one of those nominees now is going to read the Constitution.
Oh, you better believe it.
We may have actually accomplished some good out of this.
Yeah.
Because I bet you every nominee that goes before the legislative committee now is going to say, oh, yes, I know where the Article 5 is.
Yeah, just in case.
That's the process for amending the Constitution. I know what Article 2 is. That's the article that deals with the legislative branch of the Constitution.
Just in case there's a pop quiz.
That's right. They're going to know the Constitution now. And maybe they'll actually start questioning, well, maybe this isn't unconstitutional after all.
Right.
Oh, well, that's the news.
That's it for today. We appreciate your prayers, your support, and we ask you to tell people about TruNews. We do need your financial support. I will make a request. I seldom talk about finances, but at this point in January, this new year, we could use a boost. So whatever the Lord speaks to your heart and impresses upon you to donate, we would be very, very grateful to receive your support. Love you very much. We'll see you tomorrow.
God bless you.